Is that the right one?
Yeah.
Yep. Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's just coming up to 10:15, so we're going to make a start. I'm just checking with the clerk that we are quorate.
Yes, we are, Chair.
That's good. And thank you to members for being able to attend this extra meeting of the committee. My name's Peter Topping. I'm the independent chair of the Audit Committee. So we have apologies for absence. So we have Councillor Grimshaw, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Sesford and Councillor Towns.
And Dr. Green as well.
And, sorry, and who?
Stuart Green.
And Stuart Green, yes, yes. But nevertheless, we are quorate. Okay.
Yes, I'm right beside Louis.
I should say that we had Councillor Wallace on standby to haul him in from the planning committee if it was necessary, but we don't. Disclosure of members' interests. Are there any interests to disclose? If so, Stephen will be able to assist. Jeff.
Just the advance saying that, but I don't think the material.
No, we had discussed that. Yes.
So, and I am in good state or so.
Yes.
Okay. Now this is a not exactly a one agenda item meeting, but it's a meeting. It's an extra meeting, so therefore we're not taking the minutes of the previous meeting, and we're not going through the log of actions. So we're moving straight to the external audit reports, and I'm going to invite our colleagues from Mazars to present the auditor's annual report. Before I do that, I don't know if, Jan, is there anything you want to say? Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold, but is there anything you want to say by way of introduction?
No, Chair, thank you.
Right. Okay. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The first item that you've got from us on the agenda is our annual audits report. So that's the report that sets out our findings in relation to our code responsibility, our audit code responsibility to be satisfied about an entity's arrangements for delivering economy, efficiency and effectiveness in the use of resources. So I mentioned the code there. We follow the National Audit Officer's Code of Practice, and that requires us to use 3 headings to group our work, to summarise the findings of that work, whereby we become either satisfied or not about the body's arrangements. And those headings are governance, financial sustainability, and the 3 E's, economy, efficiency and effectiveness. So the report that you've got in front of you follows that structure. This is the first time that we have issued an annual auditor's report to this county council without any serious adverse findings. So effectively it represents a watershed moment in the levels of satisfaction that we are reporting. So previously we haven't been satisfied with the county council's arrangements for securing value for money, and we've explained why in previous reports. I think the messages have been well rehearsed at many meetings of this group, and we needn't cover that ground, but we've reached a position of now being satisfied, hence the report of this nature, and that reflects the degree of and the depth and the breadth of work that has been carried out by members and officers to regularise arrangements, to make sure that those arrangements were understood by everybody who needs to, and by putting in place arrangements to monitor their operational effectiveness. As was mentioned earlier this morning, those arrangements will be tested, possibly after the election, maybe before, but our work for 23-24, as I say, is a watershed for the County Council. We're reporting a positive annual auditors report under each of those three headings. We haven't identified any significant weaknesses to report, so Diane has probably got something to say about the detail of the report, if that's all right with you, Chair.
That's fine. Thank you. Diane?
Thank you, Chair. So if I can just touch on a few points on the Auditor's Annual Report, rather than go through every page. On the financial sustainability, one of the key areas for us at most councils these days is the level of savings required and the financial pressures. At some councils, we actually raise this as what we call an other recommendation, where we think it's something where the council really needs to focus in on this. We know that this council is well aware of the savings required of the financial pressures, so our assessment has been we don't need a separate recommendation on this. We have nonetheless set out some detail around what the level of savings have been achieved over the last 3 to 4 years and the pressures coming up in the coming years, because it is one of the key parts that's going to be important for the council in the next few years. In respect of the governance criteria, we set out in the Auditor's Annual Report the prior year significant weakness, which was split by the specific criteria, and we set out some narratives saying why we felt those areas were no longer significant weaknesses. And we provided a clear, it was a 2-page summary of that, stating what our reason was. Just for a bit of background as well, for members, we have what's called an internal moderation panel. So where any significant weaknesses are raised within Forvis Mazar, we take those to an internal panel, and there is challenge by other senior members within Forvis Mazar to make sure that we're just not taking the judgments on our own, and that there is an objective third person saying, actually, have you considered X, Y, and Z? So similar to prior years, we had to take our conclusions in respect of the significant weakness to this panel and explain the basis for our judgments. On the governance criteria set out on page 17, a little summary, if you like, of the various different governance reviews over the last few years, because there have been a few, so just to try and summarise that on one page to see what there is. And one of the themes on that is as a lot of good practice has been reflected and positive change, but reflecting the fact that embedding change can take time. And I think that's a message that's come through on a number of reviews, and that's probably quite a true point. In the remainder of the report, in the economy, efficiency and effectiveness, we set out some of the results of other inspectorates and regulators. And I think this committee gets an annual report on the work of other inspectorates, which is really good practice. And the most recent for this council, I think, was the adult social care inspection, which I think it got reported earlier this year to Cabinet. And that was another positive outcome. So that's included in there. And I have mentioned as well the independent review that's been commissioned into Fire and Rescue Service. In the remainder of the report, we set out the fees for the year, the scale fee that is set by public sector audit appointments. That's the body which contracts with firms nationally to provide audit services. And also at the back, there is a summary of what's going to be in the next report that we will present, which is the detail from the audit completion report. And the intention is that the auditor's annual report, it may not feel snappy at 36 pages. It's meant to be a user-friendly summary of the external auditor's work to go on the external website, and every member should get a copy. So if you like, you're getting everything in that one report, and it's slightly more summarised. Nothing further to add on that. Very happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. We've got quite a lot of interest in this morning, but I'm going to open this up to members of the committee initially, and then we'll take it from there. I mean, I should say that, as Diane, you mentioned, I mean, you've summarised on one page the significant amount of scrutiny and the council has been subject to over the last couple of years. And this audit committee has played a part and seen that journey. And as you say, I think this is quite an important milestone. But right, members of the committee, any questions to our external auditors? Councillor Oliver.
Could I just make a comment rather than a question? I think, you know, I've been, and other members of this committee have been very willing to challenge in the past few years when things haven't been going so well. So I think it's only right that we acknowledge the efforts that the external auditors, the internal audit department, and senior officers have made to turn things around and get to the point we're at today. And it has been a painful journey, but it's been a well worthwhile journey, and I think everybody should be congratulated for that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dale.
Mine's just a positive reaction. Just say thank you very much for the report, and it's quite, having been on audit and watched this all the way through, it does actually make sense. But I think the good thing is, the outcome is that there are no significant weaknesses at the present time. But it does also say that it's going to take time to embed the whole of the changes that are being made, that have to be made. So we all have to be positive to look forward and say that we need to keep on embedding everything that is good that we've learned to ensure that going into a new council, that is not lost, and I think that's the important thing. But thank you. Because it is quite, if you look at all the background, it's quite significant background, and but there is a lot more room for getting things embedded. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions to our external auditors, I'm inviting the committee to agree that we note and accept the annual report. Agreed? Right, thank you. So we now turn again to Mazars, Mark and Diana. You're going to take us through agenda item 3B.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Audit completion report sets out the findings of the work that we do in relation to the County Council's statement of accounts. So we previously brought our audit strategy memorandum, our plan, to the meeting of this committee not so long ago, and we included within that plan our description of what we determined as our significant audit risks. It also set out our planned timeline. Your officers have been up against it, servicing a number of audits over a very short period of time, and this group is also briefed on the backstop date and the implications of that new statutory requirement. So we're on course to conclude our procedures by the end of this week, which is the second backstop date. That would allow us to, if we can complete those procedures, issue an unmodified audit opinion and make sure that we build on the good work and the good relationships that we've had in getting to a position where we've signed off multiple audit opinions in a very short period of time. So Diane presented the significant risks to the previous meeting of the committee, and Diane will want to tell you what we found in relation to each of those risks.
I really do, thank you. So if I can take you straight to the section where we set out significant matters which we've discussed with management that incorporates the significant risks, and if you like, that's the big issues which you need to know about that we discussed with management during the audit. So one of the first bits was we looked at the valuation of property, plant and equipment, and you'll have heard us every year we talk about this. Unfortunately, it is a big area of scrutiny by our regulators, which then impacts on what we do, and it's a very big figure in your accounts. And we looked and challenged at what we call surplus asset valuations. So that's assets which are no longer classed as operational, that have been valued on a surplus asset basis. This is quite a techie area where there are specific requirements in place around valuing them. And as you know, the council had a new valuer from a couple of years ago, and that new valuer refined their approach between 23-24 and the prior year. And that led to quite a big increase in the valuation of those surplus assets. So what we wanted to make sure was we wanted to be satisfied that the prior year wasn't materially misstated. So we did challenge management on that. We looked at the valuations and we obtained the assurance we needed. I think there was a non-material unadjusted error. We also spent quite a bit of time looking at group investment properties, and that's Advance, if you like. Obviously, Advance has highly material investment properties, which is split into Advanced commercial and housing. So you've got the residential houses, and then you've got the commercial properties, which are industrial units, shopping centres and the like. They are valued annually, highly material figure, so our testing strategy remained the same as prior years, which is we get assurance from the Advance auditor when we look at their work, but we also actually top that up to make sure we had the level of assurance we wanted by using our own internal valuation team to look at some of the big valuations like the shopping centres. And leading on from that, we challenged management on the disclosures in the group accounts, because what we wanted to see is we always want more auditors. We'll ask councils to take things out, but sometimes also put things in. What I think we've done in 23-24 is we've added in more detail showing the split of the Advance assets between the residential and the commercial. And just that flows through now and it's a little bit clearer. Pensions was another big area which we looked at, and 23-24 is the first year when the council has had a net pensions asset for its local government pension scheme liabilities. So there were various technical considerations, and you remember in the summer there was a last minute hiccup potentially in respect of a technical standard called IFRIC 14. We all got excited about it, and as did council officers. It came to nothing, so that was good. We got the assurance we needed from the pension fund auditor, and there was one additional matter in relation to the active Northumberland contract. So the council acted as a guarantor for those staff who were part of active, who were in the local government pension scheme. When the contract was won by a new provider back in December 23, I think, the council's underlying guarantee was triggered, and that meant, as at the 31st of March 24, the council took back the responsibility for those pension liabilities. So there was a transfer in. The net transfer was not material, but the gross figures were. So we carried out various work in respect of that. We looked at what management had done. Management had obtained a specialist legal advice report on this, and we were satisfied on how it was accounted for. We also looked at grant income and how that was accounted for. A little bit of a dull point. It didn't actually change the bottom line, but in the council's income and expenditure account, it was where it sat, whether it was within net cost of services, portfolios, or further down below. And then we're looking ahead to 24-25. There is a big, this is big in audit world, trust me, IFRS 16 is all about a leasing standard. And this has been a big thing in the NHS, and it will come for local government for 24-25. So we talked to management around what they were doing to prepare for that, to make sure that they were on track for it. And the Northumberland Line project, that invariably, given, I think it was 2 stations opened before Christmas and more this year, there were a lot of transactions and balances in the 23-24 accounts in respect of the Northumberland Line. And the council's acting as a lead authority, if you like, in respect of that. So that flowed through quite a lot of our testing and getting an understanding of the arrangements in place and making sure that was accounted for properly. So those were the main areas of our work, including the significant risks. The headline messages were that we didn't identify any material misstatements, either individually or cumulatively. So later in the report, we set those out and we split them into what were relating to the council and what's relating to the group. And our assessment was that they weren't material, either individually or cumulatively. So when you're considering approving the accounts, that's to bear in mind that we're saying the unadjusted misstatements are not material. And we set out also amendments to disclosures. I mentioned to officers when I shared this draft report earlier in February that they looked a slightly longer list than they might have wished for, but because of the timing of when the 23-24 accounts were issued, that was back in May 24, actually we hadn't finalised the audit of all the old years, so there were a number of issues that got picked up in those audit years they were sorted after 23-24 draft accounts were prepared. So we knew there would be a bit of catch-up. And then finally, in the report, we set out the 2 pages in respect of the prior year value for money significant weakness. And you'll have noticed that those 2 pages are identical in the auditor's annual report. So that's a direct lift across from there. So we are on track to sign off. The statutory deadline is Friday. There's a little bit of admin to do, but hopefully we will be able to do that, subject to the committee approving the accounts and getting the letter of representation. Happy to take any questions on our report, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. And before we start questions, I think that we ought to note and give significant credit to the professionalism and hard work of council officers in terms of meeting the challenge of working through to produce the document that we now have in front of us. So in such short order, given that, you know, as you just said, we were dealing, or officers were dealing with the previous years relatively recently. So so it is extremely well done. Okay, any questions to our external auditors? Just on it's a minor point, but I'm just interested. I mean, you mentioned the discussions around the valuations, and I mean, is it just part of the nature of things that when you've got assessors forming a judgment, there is going to be a level of discussion as to whether that valuation is here or here or here? I mean, you know.
It is, Chair. Evaluation is an opinion at a point in time, and our regulator has, over the past few years, insisted that we, as auditors, challenge the valuations that local authorities report. That's led to a whole host of audit procedures and has been led to certain other side effects. But the impact in terms of our relationship with the council is that we seek evidence for the opinions about values, be they on pensions or property, plant and equipment. And the rigour of the regulator's test means that if we're not satisfied, we come back with follow-up queries. So I say that without apology, because it's what we're required to do in order to give safe audit opinions. So opinions and judgments necessarily lead to conversations, and then necessarily quite often lead to additional evidence requirements from external auditors. And that's where we've been, not just with you, but with other people we audit, and it's been the same for audit suppliers in local government too. And it's been like that since about 2014, which is when the regulator took a different stance about asset valuations.
Okay, thank you. Right. Oh, Councillor Dale.
Yeah, just to say thank you very much. And it is very thorough, the work you've done, and obviously, certainly with the valuations of properties, etc. And I think, obviously, Advance, we looked at that some years ago about the Advance and their stock as well. So hopefully, everything now will be on a sure footing for next year. Thank you.
So, before we agree and accept, I mean, it would be remiss of us not to note that the amount of money paid over for the professional services is significantly higher than in previous years, but our understanding, and Jan, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong on this, that the fee scale is set by a third party, so it isn't yours and it isn't ours, it's the third party. That's right. Yep. Okay. On that positive note, are we going to note and accept the audit completion report as presented to us? Agreed? Great. Right. Now we move to, equally important, the Council Statement of Accounts, which we've had in draft since May 24. But the important point here is that we now have a Statement of Accounts that we're being asked to approve, taking account of the views of the external auditor. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair, and the committee are also asked to give a delegation to me to resolve any final sort of matters of detail arising, although I think we've probably worked through all of those issues now, but there may be some little tidying up things. So those are the two things the committee have been asked to recommend.
Okay, and that work needs to take place before Friday, is that correct? The 28th?
Yeah, well, yes, if we want to
Yes.
get everything over the line by the statutory deadline,
I understand.
yes, we've got 2 days to do it.
Yes, right. And my understanding is that not every local authority is in this current fortunate position. But we won't dwell on other people's circumstances. We'll just focus on Northumberland. So what we're invited to do is approve the statement of accounts, taking account of the information supplied to us by the external auditors, and that will enable this backstop to be met of the 28th of February. Any final points before we do that? Chair, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The 28th is a really important date. It's the date on which you need to make sure that the accounts are on your website, because the following day the government department will be having a look. That's what happened at the December backstop date, and you were asking about others, and I think 77 local authorities didn't have published audited accounts by the December backstop date. So the government will be looking the very next day. So the 28th is really important.
So the most important person is the person that loads the documentation up on the website. Okay, so we're approving on behalf of the council. We're in agreement, and we note that, as Jan has just said, if there are any minor matters, that you have the delegated authority to resolve those. And that completes the substantive items on the agenda.
Can you just take a vote on that? Just
Oh, we need to take a vote, right? Right, Councillor Reid proposing.
I just wanted to say, thanks. You've kind of ruined me day, really, because I can usually find something in there. I can usually, I can argue about how many angels are dancing on the head of a pin, just like anybody else. And it's just refreshing to get back to the point where it's acceptable, and I'm not uneasy about anything. It's, you've all done very well. and that's the officer side and the auditors, and as I say, it's, these are my final few meetings now, and so, thanks, it's really good. And as I say, I couldn't find anything that I could argue about. The council's now back where it should have been after we wandered around the wilderness for a while. So well done, thank you very much, and I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Recommendation moved and seconded by Councillor Oliver. Agreed.
Yeah, Councillor
Councillor Dale?
No, I think that's the vote.
Right. Jeff, thank you for that. That was an eloquent summary, but but you're right. I mean, yeah. But you're right. I mean, it is more than good. It is significant to see the council in a situation where normalcy is returning after a period of some turbulence. I've not been made aware of any urgent business, and the next standard meeting of the committee is scheduled for Thursday, the 27th of March. And that concludes this morning's business. So thank you all for attending, and the meeting is now closed.